Monopolistic competition seems like it would be a paradox, right? Well, it's really just a combination of two forms that we've already learned about, perfect competition and monopoly. So, in the combination of these two, we need to take a quick moment to talk about what it gets what from. Let's do that now. Obviously, as part of a monopoly, there is some price setting power. However, these monopolistic competition firms emulate perfect competition in some things with how the market has many firms in it and how there are low barriers to entry. It is the differentiated products that give the monopolistically competitive firms the monopoly power or the price setting power that we've talked about in other episodes. Now, the short-run equilibrium of an industry takes the number of firms as given. The long-run equilibrium is reached only after enough time has elapsed for firms to enter or exit the industry, basically bringing everyone's profits back down to zero. That's right, in the long run, there will always be a profit of zero. So let's take a quick peek-see at this graph, see what we're getting ourselves into. There you see is our graph. Marginal revenue, demand, that'll be a straight line, just so you know. Marginal cost, perfect, and let's say the average total cost is here. Whoopsies, see that little gap right there? We're going to be earning a profit because the ATC is lower than the D in terms of the price and where it is hit on this profit maximizing point right about here. Funky, funky, funky. That's fun stuff. So, I mean, we've all seen the graphs already. There's your, basically what you're going to be getting with every graph, right? So you have that zero profit equilibrium as the official AP term, but again, in the long run, a monopolistic competitive industry always ends up in a zero profit equilibrium. Each firm makes zero profit of its profit maximizing quantity. So you're going to notice that your graph, once you get to that zero sum, is going to be, there's no good way to do this. Nope. Well, that's un poquito de un desastre. Pero don't sweat the small stuff, I guess. There we go. Can you hear me better? Does that work? Okay, good. So, ooh, my pen's a little too big now. Okay, sounds good. So we're just going to have this graph, right? I have MR come here with a D, marginal cost, and then you're going to have, let's see if I can get this right, I'm going to draw this out just so that's our profit maximizing price. We're going to have it done, there. See right here how the ATC is tangent to the demand line, basically meaning that the point at which this profit maximizing point hits the demand line for price is also where it hits the ETC. That means that your graph is in that's your marginal cost, in that zero sum equilibrium that we were talking about. That's fun. What else do we have? Of course, since, there's also something that's excess capacity. Basically, when a firm produces less than the output at which average total cost is minimized. Basically, it's the failure to produce enough to minimize average total cost. Basically, because you won't be able to sell it. That's excess capacity. It's not good. Now, in the short and long run, it's inefficient, because with that price setting power, you are not controlling the price of the market, and you are, in effect, screwing you and your company over. That's not the case, but that's actually not the case at all. It's very good for your company to have this. I misspoke. That's my apology. But however, you are missing out. Your market is you're not taking the market price, so you are going to have some inefficiency in that market. Now, remember when we said that monopolies that basically the thing that makes monopolies different is how they differentiate their products? Well, think of any advertisements you've seen recently. What were they doing? They were trying to tell you why an Apple iPhone is better than a Samsung iPhone, for example, or why I was going to give an example with the Hershey company, but honestly I can't think of any other chocolate manufacturer. Nestle, there you go. Why Hershey chocolate is better than Nestle, or the example I thought of when I was struggling to think of the chocolate example. Coke and Pepsi, right? What was it? If I can remember to put in, I could do like the Pepsi commercial, the one that the Pepsi commercial from the Super Bowl where they have Cardi B and like, oh, Cardi, or, we could just not. Here, how about this? If I remember, I'll add it in. That might mean the video gets turned in. I'll turn in the video tonight, but I might come back and redo it after the deadline so I can add that clip in. Ooh. That's going to mean a trip to the library for me. Okay. Anyways, how firms differentiate their products. Back to economics, right? Though technically the advertisement was economics. It all comes back, baby. Okie doke. So you can have a differentiation by style or type here. So just having you stare at this graph, why don't I? Style/type. Right? The sellers in a strip mall each sell different items, right? Or let's say you have a strip mall, but it's a restaurant part of your strip mall, right? So you have a hamburger place, a pizza place, a Chinese food, a Mexican food place, blah, 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 so on. Well, each consumer will arrive at the food court with a preference for one of the other things. This preference can depend on anything from the mood to the diet or to what they've eaten recently, right? Like, pizza's always great, right? But if I've just had pizza 3 nights in a row because I went to 3 different parties, I'm probably going to maybe look at the Panda Express on a strip mall, right? So the preferences are not going to make the consumer's indifference to the price, right? Like, if it was going to, let's say, Panda Express was charging $200 per plate, well, obviously, I'm going to go to the Wendy's next door where I can get my junior bacon cheeseburger for $4, right? But if it's slightly more expensive, like maybe I'd pay an extra $1 to avoid having burgers again, right? Who knows? So that means that these different products from these different vendors are technically substitutes, but they're not perfect substitutes. They're imperfect substitutes, right? Because of the differences in price and all that. Vendors in the food court or in the strip mall are the only sellers who are going to differentiate their offerings by type. Clothing stores can concentrate on different types of clothing. Auto manufacturers offer different types of cars, books. There are a bunch of different types of books. Product differentiation is a characterization of most consumer goods. As long as people will differ in their tastes, there will be differences in products and varieties offered. Let's bullet this because we're then going to move on to numero dos. Location. Right? The gas in gas stations is exactly the same, right? But location of the stations matters to the consumers. It's more convenient to stop by gas near your home, near your workplace, or wherever you are when the gas gauge gets low, which is why a lot of monopolistically competitive industries supply goods differentiated by location, like service industries, for example. You can open another dry cleaners because you know people are just going to go to whatever the closest dry cleaners is, which there's a whole thing, it's like hotels law, where that'll determine where things like that get placed. It's really interesting. Not technically economics, technically AP Human Geography. That was an interesting class. I'm definitely not doing a video series on that. Number 3 is going to be quality. Let's say you have a real craving for sparkling water. How much are you willing to spend on that sparkling water? And because you need to consider there's like sparkling water, like this lovely Ice Mountain sparkling water that I'm drinking right now. Wow, that's a very nice image. This is a good camera. I'm glad we have this. Or you can get like San Pellegrino. That's a lot. Pellegrino is going to be a lot more expensive, mainly because you're not buying the bulk pack out from Costco. AP Economics. I think we might be sponsored by Costco now. So yeah, different qualities, different forms of price differentiation, but there are some controversies about this, of course, right? Because we've always assumed up till now that this differentiation happens in a way that corresponds to desires of consumers. There's real convenience in having a gas station in your neighborhood. And to be honest, Chinese food and Mexican food are really different from each other. However, in the real world, some of these differentiations can be puzzling. What's the difference between Crest and Colgate toothpaste, or between Energizer or Duracell batteries, or even really between Marriott and Hilton hotel rooms? Most people don't have a difference for that. But the different producers of these goods make considerable efforts to convince consumers that the products are different from and better than those of their competitor. Now, of course, I'm going to hit the reason you all really watch this video, because none of you want to go into economics, you want to go into marketing. That's fine. We're going to be talking about advertising. Wheat farmers don't advertise their stuff on TV, but like car dealers do. But that's not because farmers just don't want to get on TV. It's because advertising is worthwhile only in industries in which firms have at least some market power. I'm not going to write that down, but that's a great quote for you to remember. Right? Because the wheat farmer is going to be a perfectly competitive guy. So there's literally no point to him creating to him advertising his products, right? Firms with market power would spend money on ads because it, works. But why does it work is a real question. Because from society's point of view, a lot of economists will view advertising as a waste of resources. It basically, the most common form of ad is, or the most least wasteful form of advertisement, it's going to be one that just informs buyers about what they have to offer, right? But maybe a real estate ad that declares the sunny, charming 2-bedroom, 1-bath, air-conditioned house. It gives you information about this house that you might be buying, right? But what if it's because Oprah recommends a flavor of ice cream? Obviously, Oprah's not an expert on ice cream any more than a sports star is an expert on batteries. And nobody is even under the impression that a celebrity is going to pick the company that they get behind, right? But companies believe with good reason that money spent on promotions increases their sales, that they'd be in big trouble if they stopped and their competitors continued to do so. But why are the consumers influenced by these ads? It's because consumers are not as rational as economists would like to assume. Consumers' judgments or tastes can be influenced by things that most smart people, and by smart people I of course mean economists, think ought to be irrelevant, such as which companies hired the most charismatic celebrity to endorse its product. Just remember, consumer rationality is a useful working assumption, but it is never an absolute truth. Now, let's say that these ads by celebrities can be used as indirect signals into a world in which consumers don't have the best information about their products. For example, let's say you need something and I'm going to say this just because it's funny, you need yellow pages. Because I know everyone in my generation, whenever they have a problem, they go look up who to call in the yellow pages. Anyways, they usually have different sized ads, right? And if you go for the bigger ad, there's no real reason to pick the company with the bigger ad, right? But there's also the logic that, hey, if they spend the money on the big ad, they have the money to blow on the big ad because they're successful, right? So you never know. So ads work by manipulating only the weak-minded, except not. They manipulate everybody. Also, you can differentiate your product by using your brand name, or your name owned by a particular firm that distinguishes its products from that of other firms. For example, the company's brand name is the most important asset it possesses. The name McDonald's is worth more than the sum of the deep fat fryers and hamburger grills that the company owns, right? They could lose all that stuff tomorrow, and they could still make it back because they are McDonald's. However, if they lost the name McDonald's and it was just Bill's, McDonald's is a bad example. I personally do not like McDonald's. Let me draw you a little picture to demonstrate. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. No, thank you. That's right. Anyways, this becomes a bit of a problem when you have a product that everyone conflates with a brand name, such as Xerox or Kleenex. Kleenex is a brand name of tissue. Legally, any competitor must describe it as a facial tissue. Such as with advertising, the social usefulness of brands' names is a source of dispute. Does preference for brands reflect consumer irrationality, or do brand names convey real information? Do they create unnecessary market power, or do they serve a real purpose? Just like advertising, it's probably some of both. on one hand, they do create unjustified market power. However, like for example, with some medicines, aspirin are cheaper, but there's no loss of quality just because it's in the generic form. However, brand names offer some assurance that the seller is engaged in repeated interaction with his customers and has a reputation to protect. Right? If you have a bad experience at that McDonald's, every experience at McDonald's, in my opinion, but you vow to never eat again at a McDonald's, that's going to matter to the company. So it provides McDonald's an incentive to provide consistent quality. So, thank you very much for coming out. This is Duncan Fox driving away into AP Economics.